One thing I'm proud of my life is to continually ask, what is it I want and what works for me? You know, as I get older, I might be closer to death, but I've become more aware of myself. I can feel more comfortable saying yes and no to certain things and making decisions because I know what works for me and what doesn't. My name is Chris. I'm from Australia. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a web developer specializing in Shopify.
And how did you come into that career, or how did you decide to become a web developer, specializing in Shopify?
Yeah, so it's been a journey. I first decided on web development because I was looking at different careers I could do remotely. I have always wanted to, my entire career has been predicated on having freedom to be able to travel and work remotely. That was the only thing that got me excited about my career. And I looked at the different pathways, and web development seemed to be the best one, at least for me. There's some people that probably hate to code, and that's fair enough. But for me, I liked this idea of coding, and I also liked that it was very remote friendly. And then how I got into the Shopify niche was like years later. I was looking to find a specialization because web development is a pretty broad field. To just be a web developer doesn't really mean anything. Like, what are you working on? Are you front end? Are you back end? All this sort of stuff. So I was always fascinated by Shopify. A lot of my friends who I'd met traveling had Shopify stores, but there wasn't a lot of information out there on it. So what I did was I took a job. I went sort of backwards and took away some freedom to help my career. And the job, I just soaked up absolutely everything I could about Shopify, and then quit that job and then went back out freelancing again, this time with a specialization within web development.
Going back to when you knew that you wanted freedom,
Yeah.
and you knew you wanted autonomy in your work.
Yeah.
When and how did you discover that?
Yeah, I guess it came from like the travel bug, you could say. So like I did this study abroad in the US. It was like 10 years ago in 2014. And I just had experiences on that study abroad experience that you couldn't have in Australia. You know, like there's certain things you need to travel in order to have a different experience. And I was looking for different ways to basically have the live abroad experience again. But the problem with my study abroad was it was just all like, I just wanted to have the American college experience. It wasn't so much about the studies. It didn't move my career forward. I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my career. And so I was like in this tricky position where I was like, okay, I want to have a career and be responsible and like work my way up. But I also want to have these exciting experiences that can only be had abroad. And yeah, it literally clicked for me when I heard the term digital nomad for the first time. And that it literally just like, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just going to be an accountant. And then, oh my God, you can work remotely and travel? Sign me up.
Where did you hear the term digital nomad first?
Yeah, it was from an article. I know the exact title. It was, "This guy is starting 12 startups in 12 months on wired.com."
Peter Levels.
Yes. Yeah. And by Peter Levels, the guy that started nomadlist.com, now nomads.com. He's got that domain now. And yeah, it was like a story about a guy who had done study abroad and now like was building apps while traveling the world. And I was like, damn, that's what I want to do. Like, that sign me up, you know?
Where did you find, because a lot of people, they know they want this freedom, they know they want this autonomy, but then they find it hard to actually follow that path, maybe because of expectations, judgment, or fear of failure.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that in executing this vision that you had for your life?
Yeah, that's something that I maybe struggle to relate to a little bit because I was so bored of my life that I was looking for anything. And so I didn't feel like I don't feel like I sacrificed much. But other people are in different stages of life. Maybe they could have a family, they could have an existing career that they need to walk away from. I guess because I was starting at zero, I didn't really have much to lose, you know? So like, I did have the sunken cost, I guess you could say, of university, but a lot of people, you know, use don't use their degree in the end anyway. I did finish the degree that I was studying, which was accounting, even though I didn't take that career in accounting. So you could say, but I mean, I'd done it already. There wasn't really a sacrifice to be made by traveling after that. I guess, yeah, like it's easy to move towards something when the alternative sucks. Do you get what I'm saying? It's like that saying, the great is good is the enemy of great. And because my life I didn't consider in Australia good, then it wasn't comfortable enough for me to feel like I'm sacrificing anything. It was just like, I have to do this. You know, if you want something bad enough, you just do it. So yeah, you mentioned to me earlier about the golden handcuffs, and for me, I didn't have any handcuffs. It was just like, this sounds great. I've got nothing to lose. Let's do it.
And so you graduated university in accounting, with accounting.
Yeah.
Accounting. So you're 21, 22.
I dropped out 2 times of university, so maybe I was a little bit older than that. So I'm 32 now, and I finished in 2015. So
24 roughly.
Yeah.
So you're 24, you graduate with accounting. You know, at this stage, did you already know you're not going to use this?
Yeah. So one thing I did that was really good was do a bunch of internships. So I did 4 different internships. 2 were like Big Four, and 1 was national, and 1 was like just local. And so like I tried it, I couldn't say, oh, I just don't want to work for Big Four. Oh, I couldn't just say, oh, I don't want to work for national. Oh, I want to work local. Like I tried all the different ways to be an accountant, and none of them, it all sounded depressing to me, to be honest. So I was so glad that I had the experience of doing these internships, which is like sort of like tester jobs, to know that I definitely didn't want to do that career.
So you're still very proactive. So you actually tested and experimented with whether the theory of being an accountant would suit you.
Yeah, I guess like I definitely wanted to make something of my life, and it felt like I either go to university and have a career, or I go back to being a waiter, which, being a waiter wasn't bad. It was social. It was kind of fun sometimes, but I knew I didn't want to be a waiter my whole life, So yeah, like I was just reluctantly like pushing myself to do well at this career that I didn't even want.
So you graduate with an accounting degree, and then at some point you've either taught yourself web development.
Yeah. So this is the crazy thing. So I had about 6 months left. I had like 1 semester to go when I found out about this digital nomad thing. And I was just like, oh, geez, like I want this instead. But like, I wasn't going to leave my degree with 6 months left to go. I think I only had 3 units too. It wasn't even a full-time load. So what I did was I started learning how to code, teaching myself how to code. And there's this educational platform called, I think it's called LinkedIn Learning now, but back then it was called Lynda. And it comes free with a lot of institutions, an institution like a university. So my university had a free subscription to Lynda, so I could go on this website. And this is the crazy thing to me, is that I learned all of this for free with my university while being at university, paying money for a 3-year degree. And what ended up happening was I networked a little bit, and when I say networked, I just went to some meetups for this web development framework called Ruby on Rails, which web developers will know about. And I just studied like a 12-hour course on lynda.com, went to these meetups, and I got hired before I graduated.
Wow.
And so like I just couldn't believe that, okay, I did self-learning for a few months, got a job in my last semester of university before I graduated. Like the difference between 3 years of formal education and just teaching myself and getting a job, like it was so much shorter, the time period.
And I was getting a job in not accounting, right? This was the where you got a 9-to-5 job, took a step back to learn the specialized skills.
No, this was back in 2015. Yeah, back in 2015.
But it was as a web developer, that job.
Yeah. But to be honest with you, that job didn't work out because like it was too soon, to be honest. And I realized I'm more of a front end guy. Like I mentioned earlier, there's web development's a big field, and some people are more back end and some people more front end. In that firm, the guy that hired me, he didn't even look at the front end. Like it was all just software. He was trying to figure out problems with data models and all this like more computer sciencey thing. I kind of like building front end user experiences more than being a software guy. So like for me, that was another part of my story where it was like quite disheartening. I got the job, it was kind of a win, and it wasn't what I wanted to do. And then I kind of felt lost. But then I found front end, and then what was it, about 4 years later or 3 years later, I found the niche of Shopify.
So from that job, you're 24, 25, then 3 years later, you find the niche of Shopify.
Yeah.
What happened in between those years?
I was doing web development. I was doing a lot of WordPress sites because I wanted to find something. I was trying to find a specialization, and I just chose WordPress. Like I wasn't really set on it, but it's like it was a simple platform for a lot of people. Like, and I could work. It was good for freelancing because a lot of solopreneurs and small businesses were using WordPress. But I never was really into WordPress, and I never became like a big expert on it. I don't like it to this day. And so Shopify, on the other hand, when that sort of came along, the developer experience is completely different. It's and the platform, like with WordPress, right? It's an open source platform, which means that you can edit any part of it, including the back end. And that might sound good, but the bad thing about that is it's easier to mess up as well. And so if you have a WordPress site and you tell me to come in and tell me how to change this piece of text, it's not in the same place every time. I'd have to figure out, you could turn your WordPress website into an absolute nightmare to maintain if you wanted to, because you have access to all the code. Whereas Shopify, they just have your front end, which is called a theme, and everything's in the right place. And, the downside to that is that you can't change everything. So sometimes we need to find hack ways to get around the system. But with something like e-commerce, you want to have a robust platform, especially when it comes to the checkout. So the checkout is the best example of this. You can't edit the checkout page. There's a system actually to do it called checkout extensibility, but you can't edit the code of the checkout page. And Shopify do that specifically so that you can never break the checkout. So you can never have an issue where you run a sale and people can't transact with you. The developer experience on Shopify is just much better. And I liked the clients more because these people make money directly from their website. So they're more likely to invest in a developer. That's been my experience, at least.
We'll get back to the podcast in 1 minute, but I just wanted to let you know the sponsor of this week's episode, which is me. So I've got a free 5-day email course that will help anyone with a 9-to-5 or a beginner solopreneur start and scale their business to $1,000 per month. So you can find the link in the description in this podcast episode. Click on it. It's free to sign up. You'll get 5 emails from me teaching you and walking you through how to start your one-person business and make your first $1,000 per month recurring. So I'll see you there, and thank you for listening to this episode. What I'm getting from your own journey, though, is that no matter where you found yourself, you always experimented and tested. So first you started with WordPress, then you realized you didn't like it. So then you moved on to Shopify. Even when you're in your accounting degree, you did internships at national, regional, local level to find out whether you liked it.
Yeah.
Has that always been something like a mindset and approach you've always taken?
Yeah, I put self-awareness at a very high value in my life. You can ask the question, what does success look like to you? How do you know how to be successful if you don't even know what success means to you, right? That's a good example of where you need self-awareness, right? So one thing I guess I'm proud of my life is to continually ask, what is it I want and what works for me, and just trying to find my path in the world. And over time, as I get older, I might be closer to death, but I've become more aware of myself and what it is I like. And I can feel more comfortable saying yes and no to certain things and making decisions because I know what works for me and what doesn't. And yeah, you kind of need to experiment sometimes and just try new things in order to find that stuff out.
So at 32, what's your definition of success now?
That's a good question. So something's shifted for me recently in the last few years. I think it's since becoming in my 30s, and that is that finances has become more of a part of what successful means to me. And the reason why it wasn't as much in my 20s is because I didn't know why make money? Why make lots of money? Obviously, you got to make money to survive. There's different levels, right? You got to make money to pay your bills. But I'm not super into luxury things. Like, I don't aspire to own an expensive car or any of that stuff. So I was like, why is money important? And then when I got into my 30s, I realized, oh, like, I'm going to need to make more money to look after the people that I love and they're important to me and eventually build a family. So like, if I can't afford to put my kids through the best school or whatever, then like I haven't made enough money, right? So when I started to think of it in terms of, okay, I want to have a family, I want to support a partner, I want to, help the people. Basically, when I say the people that I love, it's mainly like I want to start my own family. And money, you're not just looking after your own self then. So that's one side of it. Finances has become more important than that. And then also with the family side of things, like finding a partner that fits into that is part of success as well. So I want to meet a high quality woman that I can do that with. And then, for it to work, I have to be at a certain financial level too. So I guess those are the two things that are kind of on my mind at the moment is I'm now that I'm in my early 30s, I'm moving towards, and some might say it's early, some might say it's late, but I want to move towards within the next 8 years max, like having a family.
So going back to when you found this niche in Shopify, you found that at like 27, 28, roughly?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
From 28 to now 32, what was the journey there? Is that when you moved from Australia to Bali? Did you move anywhere else?
Yeah. Okay. So I chose to do my year at home after being a nomad for 3 years in 2019, which in hindsight is the year before the pandemic. But I didn't know that back then because nobody knew there was an upcoming pandemic. So a part of going home wasn't just, actually, the idea wasn't so I could get a job. I was actually I kind of did all the stuff that I wanted to do traveling the world, and I kind of got a little bit bored of it. And then I had some feelings of like, now that I've been away for a while, maybe I could go back and it would be different. So it was more a lifestyle experiment to quit nomading altogether and just live back in the city that I grew up, which was Brisbane. And like see if I could enjoy Brisbane differently now, being older and having these experiences. And that experiment ended up, you could say, being a failure, I guess. Like, I mean, it's not bad because I learned, but after a year back home, I was like, okay, this is not for me. I don't want to live in Brisbane. And so I started traveling again, and I was just going to be a full-time nomad until COVID hit, and I was here, and I don't regret it, but I decided to leave here and go to Australia, and then I got trapped there. So yeah, it's been a bit of a windy journey because the pandemic came into the mix, and again, it was another important part of my life's journey because I ended up having a great time at home. I moved to the Gold Coast, which is where my parents now live, and actually my sister moved as well. My whole family lives on the Gold Coast now. So I ended up meeting someone in Australia and falling in love, and I ended up like taking a step back from the nomad life for a while to live with her in Melbourne. But thankfully the relationship ended really soon. If it's going to end, I would want it to end soon so that I could move on. And I ended up going back into traveling because that wasn't the right relationship. And I ended up going to Brazil. And in Brazil, I know this is a long story, but basically in Brazil, I realized what was important to me in a location, because I wanted to not be completely homeless as a digital nomad. I wanted to still have a home and still have a base. And it's strangely enough in the northeast of Brazil, I realized what was important to me in a destination, and Bali seemed to be it. And so I came back home, got my things all together, home being Australia, and then I made Bali my home this year. So I moved here in March, and I'm now officially based in Bali.
So what did you value 5 years ago that you no longer value now?
I guess I've become more introverted, more, and I hope that's me being more comfortable in my own skin and being okay with my own company. But I used to value more like being around people all the time, and like, especially when it comes to partying and nightlife. I don't know, maybe that's just a natural thing about getting older, but like I would feel intense FOMO if I missed out on a really good party, you know? And now it's like maybe it's partly because I live in Bali, there's always a party happening that you're not at. So, you know, like it's just, that's the funny thing about Bali is like some people can come here and be drinking 24/7 and it's just a party destination for them or a vacation destination. But here where we are right now at BWork, it's a work destination, and there's people here like me that are here every day. And my life is mainly about work at the moment, which is very different to those people that come here and they're just going to clubs all the time.
What's the most valuable skill you needed as a solopreneur/digital nomad?
Yeah, it's a good one, because the mistake I made was focusing on what I actually do, like the skills of web development, without focusing on like, how can I actually sell this to people? You see these online entrepreneurs that, you know, they're teaching other people to be online entrepreneurs, where they're saying, you don't even need to do the thing, just sell it and find someone else to do it. And you can actually build a business doing it that way. Like, I would recommend you understand a little bit about what you're selling, but you literally do not even need to do the thing that you're selling, because you can just outsource it, right? So the most important skill is anything that is directly tied to revenue, directly tied to making money, because you can be the best web developer in the world. If you're not hired, then you don't make any money from it.
What are some emerging trends or technologies that you're particularly excited about, and how do you see them influencing the future of your field?
I mean, the obvious one is AI, right? And I realized I wasn't really looking too deep into it. So here at BWork, they have a meetup every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. about AI, and it's called the AI Founders Meetup, but you don't necessarily have to be a founder to go to it. And so a lot of it, less of it is going over my head now. But in the beginning, I was like, what are these people talking about? But you see certain themes emerge, and yeah, like I heard a quote that you want to be the dumbest person in the room, and that's how you're learning. So for me at the AI meetup, when these guys talk about this very geeky stuff, I'm like, oh, I have no idea what you guys are talking about, but I think I'm in the right place because I'm learning more about what's going to happen with AI. But with what I do specifically, I think web developers and programmers are in a good position to adapt to AI, because we already are looking to automate our tasks as much as possible. So I've started using an AI assistant tool that can help me, that can read my mind sometimes and offer me code suggestions. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I've been, at least implementing it now. And obviously the technology will improve over time, and we'll see what happens in the future.
What's a big trend in the future of work that most people aren't seeing?
I guess one of the things I was talking about with somebody last night is like, countries actually want you to come and remote work from them now. Back when I started, we were all just working on tourist visas, and that was the only way to do it. And I would literally have people in my audience, or like, I guess you could call them haters, trying to expose me for working illegally. And there was more of this conversation around, oh, are these people bad for the locals? Like, they come and they raise the prices and all this sort of stuff. Now the conversation's sort of shifted, and you're actively seeing governments encourage remote work. The visa that I'm on now is the remote worker visa that they just created for remote workers, right? So they're actually encouraging it, and the governments can actually see that it's a good thing for society. Obviously, there are some downward negative effects, like gentrification does increase the costs for locals, but it's also a business opportunity for locals. So, I mean, if you had a business and then there was an influx of digital nomads, that helps your business. If you don't have a business, maybe it's a negative for you. So it's not always a negative for the local population, but it could be for some. But I think it's a net positive. Otherwise, these governments wouldn't be letting us come and offering us visas.
What advice would you give to someone just starting out on their solopreneurship or digital nomad journey?
Well, there's two parts to that. So digital nomad is digital, the work you do, and then the nomad, the lifestyle part. So in terms of the nomad part, in terms of the lifestyle, I recommend people you don't even have to quit your job, just take your leave and go travel somewhere and bring your computer and work on a project as if you would be a digital nomad. I did that actually. I went on this Southeast Asian trip to a lot of what I actually like digital nomad hotspots now, but we just went for tourism, and I brought my computer and go visit the co-working space. If you're in Bali, come visit BeWork and have a look around, grab a coffee and sit down with your computer and just be amongst it and see if it's for you, because it might not be for you, and that's fine, right? But if you get excited by this environment, then, it's probably a good sign that doing this is for you, like working remotely from a foreign country. And then on the work side of things, you got to look at what people are actually getting paid money to do. Like, if you're a laborer, there's virtually zero way that you can do that remotely, right? Or a forklift operator, they're not, running that with people from, on the other side of the world. But if you work in a field that's already remote by its nature, there is no reason why you can't work remotely from another country. Now, maybe your employer is not going to let you do that. Maybe you look for another employer, or maybe you go freelance. When you're freelance, you can kind of call the shots a little bit more. But then you take on the risk of, what if I don't find clients, or what if one of my clients fires me? But you can diversify by having multiple clients. There's different ways to make that a more secure career. But there is a little bit of risk involved, and with a little bit of risk comes some reward.
What are the 1 to 3 most impactful books you've ever read?
I have to, of course, given the context, talk about the 4-Hour Work Week. That is like the Bible, the original prophecy of the digital nomads, right? Like pretty much every digital nomad has read that book. For me personally, I love, not many people talk about this book, but The Code of the Extraordinary Minds by Vishen, I can't pronounce his last name, starts with an L, Langkawi or something. That one was just, I can't remember exact concepts from it, but I just remember it being pretty powerful. And then a third, I don't read a lot of books these days. I used to read a lot, and then I realized I'm reading too much and not taking enough action.
Last 2 questions is, what advice would you give to your younger self? Let's just say 25-year-old Chris.
It's a good one. See, hindsight is always 20/20, and it's just like, I live life with no regrets, and I don't ever look back and say like, how could I do that? Because I'm a different person thinking about younger Chris, That being said, I mean, if I look at the mistakes I made, I should have. I was a victim of the shiny object syndrome when I first started digital nomading. So I did try other things. I did all sorts of things like video editing. I did even voice over artist stuff. I presented on camera for people. Random stuff, completely random stuff that I found on Upwork. So I kind of wish I had more faith in my career and just stuck with it, because what I did, like I said, I did build skills in web development, and because I wasn't because I didn't have the skills in like, oh, how do I actually go out there and sell this skill to potential like clients, I started to like lose confidence in what I was doing. But instead of doing that, I should have just figured out better ways to grow my skills and find clients, rather than oh, I got to try this and I got to try this. And just something that I struggled with as a youngster, even in high school, is just like, oh, this is not working out for me, I'm going to try something else. So just sticking to something is what, like, being more consistent and linear in my path, that could have been a difference. That would have made a difference in my life now.
And the last question is there any other message you want to leave with the audience?
I guess the thing that comes to mind is the thing that's super important to me, and I think should be important to other people, is self-awareness. So I'm not telling anyone how to live their life, but I do think it's important to get out of groupthink and actually think for yourself and actually think, what is it I actually want? And travel can help with that, because maybe you live in a culture or a family where these ideas are put into you, right? And just being outside of that environment, you don't have that, and then you can start to think for yourself. So I guess my message, or the message that comes to mind, is try to think for yourself and grow self-awareness, so you know what success looks like for you, so you're not chasing some phantom of success, and then 20 years later you're like, oh geez, this was the version of success that was told to me by society or my family, and it's not actually what I want. Now I have to go find what I want and do this whole soul-searching thing later in life. I'd say get the soul-searching done as soon as possible.
And where can people find you?
I'm Chris the Freelancer everywhere. So on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, christhefreelancer.com. If you just type Chris the Freelancer into Google, you'll find it. So pretty easy to find.
Hello, friends, and thank you again for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard and got value from the podcast, I would love for you to share it with a friend who also wants to start, grow, and scale their solopreneur business or on their own one-person business journey. And if you could like and subscribe, that would be amazing. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.